Hey everybody, um, my name's Dan. Thanks for showing up to the channel. This is a reboot of the Cardboard Kitchen podcast, which was a podcast about Magic the Gathering, made by people who play Magic the Gathering for people who are playing Magic the Gathering. It was originally intended to have four of us together talking about different variations. We had one guy who had just started, two people who had been playing for a little bit, and then myself who had been playing the longest. Fortunately, things fell by the wayside. So I'm here to try and reboot the series. I'm gonna do what I can when I can. Just kind of bear with me. So today, something I've noticed is a lot of different Magic podcasts talk about like your mana base and all that kind of stuff. And I personally do believe that if your mana base is well-rounded, you'll have more consistent games, especially in Commander. However, my issue with that is that not every mana base can be as consistent as others. So today, we're going to talk about mana bases. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Personally, I'm a big green player, so I like playing green, but I personally feel, it's personal opinion, that the best land you can play as an individual land in any deck that plays green that unfortunately also plays white is Krosan Verge. So I'm going to read to you what Krosan Verge does. Krosan Verge is a land. It says that it enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add one colorless mana, or you can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it to search your library for a forest card and a plains card and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So that's great for green-white decks, anything with green-white in it, Naya, Bant, Abzan, all those fun colors. 5-color decks can profit from it fairly well. All that fun stuff. But my issue is that it is the only land of its kind, as far as I'm aware. It's the only land that I know of that does that ability. And where I find that issue is that you really only play it in decks that play green and white. And I personally feel like, and I kind of hope at this point, that somebody from Wizards is listening and kind of like listening to all of this. And I feel like there should be a land that does what Krosan Verge does in every 2-color combination. Because some of those other colors, some of those other color combinations can't ramp the way green does. Here's my opinion on this. Why is it that green gets the best ramp land, as well as usually the only, if not the best, ramp spells? They've got Rampant Growth, Farseek, 3 Visits, Nature's Lore, Skyshroud Claim, a number of them in the 4-drop slot, Ranger's Path, all that kind of stuff that lets you search your deck for lands, basic lands, put them in play tapped. When we went back to Dominaria a year or so ago, we got Slimefoot's Stowaway, I think it was. It was a 5-cost green ramp spell that would let you find 2 lands from your deck and put them on the battlefield that had a basic land type. And then you got to do some other cool stuff based on your domain. But my whole thing is, green's the only color that really has cards that say, go find basics, put them into play. No other color combination does this, because that's what green does. That's understandable. But I personally feel that every deck, because lands are involved in every deck, lands are required in every deck, that every 2-color combination should have some form of Krosan Verge. And I do mean Krosan Verge and not Myriad Landscape. Myriad Landscape's good. It can go in any deck, but it will only grab you basics. Krosan Verge literally says forest card and plains card. So you could go find, so let's say you're playing, a 4-color deck. Let's say you're playing, Omnath, the 4-color Omnath. Let's say you're playing that. Well, if you played Krosan Verge and you cracked it, you could go find Ketria Triome and Rogram Triome. The Ketria being a forest, a mountain, and an island, and Rogram being a mountain, plains, and island. You could find both of those, put them in play taps, all that fun stuff. But other color combinations, Dimir doesn't have something like this. Urza, like Selesnya is the only color combination that has this land. This land is the only kind that I know of in existence that does what this land does. And I really feel like there needs to be more versions of this land that do this effect, but in the other the other 9 2-color combinations. On top of that, personally, Wizards kind of feel that you're dropping the ball on some of this stuff. We have the Tango lands, but we only have the 5 allied Tango lands: Canopy Vista, Prairie Stream, Sunken Hollow, Smoldering Marsh, Cinderglade. They count as 2 different land types, like Cinderglade counts as a mountain and a forest. Typically referred to as a Tango land because it comes into play tapped unless you have 2 basics already in play. So it takes 2 to tango, hence that terminology. But it's only for the 5 allied colors. So we don't have one of those for the 5 enemy colors. There's not one for green-black, there's not one for red-white, there's not one for green-blue, there's not one for white-black, and there's not one for red-blue. And I feel kind of like they're dropping the ball on that a little bit, because if I remember correctly, I remember hearing or reading about something years ago, I think it was in the Battle for Zendikar time frame, that Wizards had openly stated that if they were going to do land cycles, they were going to do all 10 land cycles. And we got the Battle for Zendikar Tangos, but we never got the other 5. In addition to that, they brought back cycling as a mechanic in Amonkhet, and they gave us cycling lands that you could fetch. That was fantastic. But again, Wizards kind of dropping the ball because this set came after that supposed announcement about them doing the full 10 land cycle. We only got the 5 allied versions. You know, you got Scattered Groves, which was your green-white, pay 2 generic and ditch it and draw a card, the cycling land. But you only got it for the allied color combinations. You didn't get any for the enemy color combinations. And I feel like Commander players are being let down as far as mana bases are concerned, to have better, more consistent mana bases, to have better games where you don't have the full run of certain land cycles. Like if you were to play a Jeskai deck, which is red, white, and blue, you have Prairie Stream, which is your Tango land, and then you have a cycle version of Prairie Stream. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's not one for red, white, and there's not one for red, blue. So if you think about like fetchable lands in your 3-color mana bases, where you're playing 2 enemy cycles with 1 allied cycle, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's 2 to 3 lands shorter on the list that you could fetch up to have a better, more consistent mana base than it would be if you were playing like an allied cycle. So I really feel like Wizards needs to flush that out. Give us a Krosan Verge for every 2-color combination that doesn't already have one. And I do mean a Krosan Verge style land, not a Myriad Landscape. If you want to make it into something like Myriad Landscape, but let you do what the Krosan Verge does, I'll be happy with that. Or I'll be happier, not necessarily like supremely happy, but I'll be happier. They need to finish out the Tango lands. They need to finish out the cycling lands. And then I just popped in my head here. So the tricolor known as Abzan, which is green, white, and black. That tricolor is special among all other tricolors because it's the only tricolor that has a fetchable tribal or typal land in it. The Abzan color combination has a land called Murmuring Bosk, which is a land that is a forest. It's a non-basic, it is a forest, and it taps for green. And when it comes into play, it'll enter the battlefield untapped if you reveal a Tree Folk from your hand. But it'll also, you can use it to generate a white or a black mana and lose a life or pay a life. There are no other tricolor fetchable tribal typo lands like Murmuring Bosk. Murmuring Bosk, again, is the only of its kind that I'm aware of that is in fact fetchable. So finish out that cycle for all of the 3 colors. And you, Wizards, if you're listening, like, you could totally pull out some oddball tribal stuff from some of these colors. Like fairies is big in is Esper now, but so is knights. Knights are also in Mardu. Mardu would probably benefit heavily from a tribal fetchable land similar to Murmuring Bosk. You know, like, why can't we get these lands? Why aren't you making these lands? Why aren't you thinking about these lands? And if you are, why is it taking forever? Like, that's just personal opinion. Like, if you guys are working on this kind of stuff, well, why is it taking forever? Why are we going back to Ravnica again? I've been playing for 23, 24 years now, something like right around that time frame. And we've gone to Ravnica 3 other times. We're just now seeing Ravnica remastered stuff. And then the murder mystery for Karlov Manor, we're back in Ravnica again. Sure, Ravnica's cool. There's a lot of different stuff you could do with Ravnica, but it seems like we're going back to Ravnica more than we're experiencing new planes or going back to other planes that don't come up as much. So, you know, okay, we're going back to Ravnica. Bring back some of these older mechanics, you know, bring us Croson Verges for all the color combinations that don't have them. Let's see something really new and not just like, here's a new take on an old spin. Or, you know, here's, you know, we're going back to Ravnica. Now, personal opinion. But I digress. Again, the land stuff. You know, tribal fetchables that produce one of 3 different colors that just are one of those colors, and then it's a pain land for one of your choice of one of the other 2. I think that those would be great to come back. Also, Wizards, another thought, because you're doing hybrid stuff with some of the mana costs and stuff. If you ever bring back cycling, why not a hybrid cycling mechanic on lands, where you can, like, if it's a blue-white land, you could pay either a blue or a white and discard it and draw a card, but also make those lands fetchable. Have them come into play tapped, but do a full cycle of 10, not just, you know, oh, we'll take that idea and put it on the other 5, you know, cycling lands that we haven't done yet. No, do a full run of 10. If you're going to do something like that, finish out your old run of the cycling lands that are fetchable with the 5 that we don't have. Finish out your Tango cycle of lands that we don't have. Please, for the love of God, give us a Croson Verge in every 2 color combination. And if we ever go back to Lorwyn, or like again, or if we ever go back to another tribal typal or 3 color themed time frame, set, plane, whatever, bring back the tribal pain lands that are technically fetchable. You know, if we're going to a new plane of existence, hey, that's great. Give us new tribes. Or update some old tribes that don't really get a whole lot of love. Like, I got a buddy, and personally I think it'd be kind of cool, but I got a buddy, he only cares about Gorgons. Like, that's all he cares about is Gorgons. Give us a bunch of Gorgon tribal stuff, but make it 3-color Gorgons. Make Gorgons possible in 3 colors with a fetchable tribal pain land. Stuff like that. It would be great to see it. It would be fantastic to be able to pick it up and play with it. It would be nice. I feel like it would be invigorating for most Commander players in all levels of play, with the exception of CDH. I personally can't get behind CDH. I don't like I win on turn 3, 4, or 5 if you don't have interaction. And even if you do have interaction, I might still win. Not a big fan of that. But like for casual players, Krosan Verge is great. Give us the other Krosan Verges, Tangos, the cycles. If you do a new cycle, do a full run of 10. Don't just do 5 of them. Tribal fetchable pains. Bring those about, please. These are some of my ideas about getting better, not necessarily the absolute best mana bases, but getting better mana bases. I understand green's supposed to be the only color that does the whole ramp with Rampant Growth, Farseek, Nature's Lore, Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, all that fun stuff. But Krosan Verge is a land. Because of how it's worded, you're only going to put it in decks that have forests and plains. Specifically both. Because otherwise it's personally not that great. But if you could give us versions of Krosan Verge that do exactly what Krosan Verge does for Boros, or Azorius, or Dimir, or Rakdos, or any of the other 2-color combinations, I think that would help those 2-color combinations be able to flush out having better games. I personally feel like it would help them flush out having much better games. Especially a lot of times, since I'll sit down at a table and I'll see some of those. I'll see like a person playing Dimir, and they're like, cool, turn 1, here's a Myriad Landscape. Pass turn. Turn 2, here's another land that makes no colored mana. Play a Soul Ring, use the Soul Ring on the Myriad Landscape, and go get 2 islands or 2 swamps. And yes, it's very odd that it happens. It doesn't really happen all the time, but I've seen games, I've seen enough games, in my personal opinion, about where players will play the Myriad Landscape in decks that don't have ways to get it back. Because that's another thing that green does extremely well, which is pulling any kind of card from your graveyard back to your hand or back to the battlefield, depending on what you use. But I've seen people play decks and they're just like, all right, cool, I got 2 of this color, and they'll go the rest of the game and still not see the other color. They won't see a mana rock that makes the other color. They won't see anything that produces the other color that they're missing in a 2-color deck. And that's not good. So I feel like if there was a Krosan Verge type of land in every 2-color combination, that they would definitely fill it out in a land slot. They would probably take it out for Myriad Landscapes. I don't think that they should. I feel like they should play both, personally. But they would see more. I guarantee you they would see more consistent games, because now they could go get their Sunken Hollow and their Watery Grave, or their Ice Tunnel, and whatever the common non-snow version is in Dominaria, Contaminated Aquifer, I think it is. They could go get those, put them in play, and now it's like, ooh, I've fixed 4 blue and black. I have 2 blue sources or 2 black sources, or 1 of each. So I really feel like that's something you as a company, you as a game design company for this particular game, I feel like that's some stuff that you need to heavily invest in looking into, heavily invest in designing. If somebody from Wizards of the Coast wants to reach out to me or leave a comment on the video or something, to get in touch with them about helping design something like this, I'm more than welcome to add my input when and where I can. But I really feel like this would help the Commander format as a whole, and not strictly green players or white players or whatever the case may be. I personally feel like if you take the advice I've given so far in this video, as far as the land advice is concerned, and you actually did these things and implemented them, I feel like Commander players would have more consistent mana bases to play better, more consistent games, to really have more fun. You know, I've played games, I've seen people play games, I've heard about people play games where, you know, their hand is great. It has the interaction to deal with the problem player. It has the interaction to stabilize. It has all this stuff that says, I might be able to win the game if I see color X in quantity X. And the issue is their mana base is not super consistent. Even when they build it as consistently as possible, it's not super consistent because not every color has the full access to the ability to color fix correctly, the ability to have appropriate two color runs. Like, real quick off the top of my head, so for white-green, you have Savannah, which is the original duel. You have Temple Garden, which is the shock. You have Canopy Vista, which is the tango. You have Scattered Groves, which is the cycling version of the tango, except it doesn't come into play untapped. You have Arctic Treeline, and you have Radiant Grove. Arctic Treeline being the snow version from Kaldheim, and Radiant Grove being the non-snow version from Dominaria. And that is... those both come into play tapped as well, but they're common. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 lands that will help you fix in green-white. But I don't know, because it's difficult to think off the top of my head. Has to be a color... white-black. So Orzhov colors. So in white-black, you've got Godless Shrine, Scrubland, the white-black Dominaria fetchable, and the white-black Kaldheim fetchable. That's a snowland. But you don't have a white-black Tango. You don't have a white-black Cycle. That's the 2 generic Ditch and Cycle. So you're 2 lands behind Selesnya as far as mana fixing capabilities. Just like Selesnya, you can also play Myriad Landscape, but that'll only fix you for one of your 2 colors. Just like Selesnya, you can also play the other fetch lands that exist, because you can play those fetch lands in just about anything. But the point and issue I'm trying to make here is, for color fixing purposes, you are 2 lands behind. You have 2 fewer capabilities for fixing. And all of the enemy colors are 2 fewer options for mana fixing behind all of the non-enemy colors, all of the allied colors. So I really feel like Wizards needs to, I don't want to say step it up, but I guess step it up. Curse and Verge variation for every 2 color combination. That will I personally believe that will immediately help all of the color combinations that don't have a full 6 fetchable options for mana fixing fix really well. And then obviously finish out your other cycles of lands that supposedly it was stated you were going to give us that we never got. And then also, please take the idea of tribal fetchables that are also pain lands into consideration for the individual colors, and make one for each of the tri-colored combinations that don't already have one. The only one that I know of in existence is Murmuring Bosk for Treefolk, which Treefolk don't really see a ton of play. There's not a lot of, like, most of the Treefolk are from Lorwyn. There's a few in other sets here and there, but it's not like a huge popular tribe. So, like, if we could get those lands, those would also help, because then there would effectively be 2 Triome options for each of the 3 color lands, or each of the 3 color cycles, one of which being a tribal option. Because let's face it, if you're in Abzan and you're playing, if you're in Abzan, you're already going to play the Indotha Triumph. But if you're also playing Treefolk, you're definitely going to include Murmuring Bosk as a land option. However, that being said, because Murmuring Bosk is effectively more fixing than what it should be, if you're in Abzan, even if you're not playing Treefolk, you're probably still playing Murmuring Bosk because it's another version of the Indotha Triome that's slightly different. So I really feel like Wizards of the Coast, if you take my ideas into consideration, assuming you have somebody listening to this and watching this, and give Commander players those things, even if you put them in pre-built decks in years to come, instead of like standard legal sets and all that kind of stuff. Like, I really feel like personally that would help a lot of the casual and not casual but not competitive players. I really feel like there's a group there of people who aren't casual players, but they're also not competitive players, that kind of are on somewhere in some kind of a boundary range, that play decks that don't win early, but also consistently stabilize and do XYZ, but they almost always play similar color combinations. Or similar cards that in the past they've used that consistently keep them alive or help them stabilize or deal with threats or things of that nature. And they play these color combinations because of the cards in those color combinations, not so much the ability to fix in those color combinations. And I feel like if Wizards, if you as a company help fix the ability to fix in colors that have difficulty fixing in those colors, games will be more consistent. Players won't have to play some of the really dumb, personally, the personal opinion is, players won't have to play some of the really dumb cards. They probably still will. But more consistent mana bases, better fixing options will help the games be more consistent, will help the games be better in a way, because you won't have one person at every table sitting down being like, I got mana screwed, or I got mana flooded, or whatever the case is, or I didn't have enough X color, or whatever the case is. More consistent mana bases with the ability to fix those mana bases really will help the Commander format as a whole. So that's my personal belief. It's my personal opinion. Take it, leave it, agree with me, don't agree with me, whatever the case is. Again, thank you to everybody who's here, who's listening. I'm trying to get this uploaded same day as recording. If you're still here and you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to leave a comment, go ahead and do that. If you want to see more stuff like this, I have ideas and plans for other various types of podcasting I'm going to be doing in the future. It'll still all be Magic related, but maybe doing a breakdown of like some deck lists or something. I don't know. And then like talking about types of cards you could play to counteract that particular deck style or whatever the case might be. Not exactly sure. Still a bunch of ideas in the works and everything. But if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you can be notified when more of this content pops up. Would really love to get 1,000 likes by the end of February. Would love to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of February. So let's make that happen, guys, because I know it can happen. I've seen it happen. Let's get it done and play better Commander games. See you guys later.